USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, February 27th, 2023. Each week we look back at the highlights of the weekend and the news of the week. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. We're going to start out with Alaska. We had buy and sell last week, or it was a couple of weeks ago now, I guess, right?
No, it was last week.
Was it last week? Boy, time flies. Well, anyway, we had buy or sell, and we were selling on Alaska. We said, it's going to be tough for them to sweep Arizona State. Alaska did. Alaska fans managed to single me out to represent all of us and everybody who votes in the poll. And
Jim and I we're the good guys here.
There you go. So they sit right now at 12th in the pairwise after a weekend sweep at Arizona. Now, there are some interesting things to look at here. First of all, they still do have to sweep Lindenwood this weekend. A split is going to really hurt them because of Lindenwood's strength of schedule and a loss being worth 1.2 at home. Once the season's over, they got to wait to see what everybody else does. There are chances for teams to climb up, especially in strong leagues where strength of schedule for all the participants will be raised up. And then we'll come back to a follow-up question on this, but just your thoughts on that. I mean, we have been talking about Alaska, and buy or sell doesn't mean we didn't think they could do it. It meant that if you had to put money down on it, would you lean toward it? It's still at that time a longer shot than it is now, and still everything has to fall the right way.
Well, I'll let you guys talk numbers because obviously your pencil's more sharp than mine. But first of all, we were all and I can't even say we're wrong. It's like we were all wrong on Alaska. I was right on Notre Dame. Yes, Notre Dame still has to win a couple and there, but I thought we did a pretty good job on it. For you to take the beating on that, Ed, I apologize. I mean,
it's okay.
Ed gets the beating, and it's the rest of the USCHO guys. So we like that. But hats off to Alaska. They're proving everybody wrong. They're proving the naysayers, the doubters. And I'm still not sure they're going to make the tournament because there's a lot going to go on. But I think they're going to sweep Lindenwood, and I think they'll put themselves in the best possible opportunity that they have. And you know what? I think that gave them a good opportunity to look at your schedule, and they did a great job of building their schedule to make sure that they're where they are. And they've won the games. You can't doubt that they've won games. Yes, a lot of them have been over Anchorage, but they've won big games when they needed to. And I think they're going to sweep Lindenwood, and they're going to have to hope for help from other people.
Yeah, I still had their odds somewhere around 50% to make it. Better than last week, where it was in the 20s. So they've helped themselves a lot. They're in good position. Anything goes wrong with Lindenwood, going to overtime against Lindenwood could hurt them. Finding a way to get into a shootout or a tie game, any of those situations, anything where the word loss comes in, forget it. It'll drop the bottom out of their RPI. What, as I think, Ed, you were trying to point out, they're going to have to do a lot of waiting then because of the fact that they'll be at 12. It's most likely that they're going to finish somewhere around 14 in the pairwise. And the reason for that is because teams below them will get to play playoff games. They're done this weekend. There's nothing more to play for, which is good because you can't lose and you can't fall. But you also can't gain and you can't solidify what you have. So they're in a position that they're just going to have to watch teams below them and see what happens. There's always a chance that a team somewhere around like 11, 10, 9, somewhere like that in the pairwise could have a first round upset that they get just, beaten by a team that they shouldn't lose to. Let's say Boston University were to get paired against, say Vermont for some reason in the single elimination game in Hockey East. It would not be you out of the tournament, but it might knock them down. in turn could then push Alaska up. These are very unlikely scenarios, but there will be the opportunity for other teams to strengthen their RPI in their own postseason tournament. And then you're going to have to hope that there's no upsets. In Hockey East is the most likely league to provide one. Obviously, Atlantic Hockey will take the 16th spot, but the chance that 15th spot could go to a Hockey East team that is not Boston University, somebody that's not in the field, say a Boston College, a UMass Lowell, Merrimack, Connecticut, Northeastern, all those teams are down below the cut line right now. So the thought that one of those teams, that could happen in multiple leagues. Maybe that happens in the CCHA as well. Maybe it also happens in the NCHC where maybe North Dakota comes out of nowhere and wins the playoffs. All of those things just take those bottom teams. We know what we've talked about this before. So that all of that stuff is the reason that Alaska still, as we talked this morning, is still 50% to get in. They're better chances than they were last Monday, even last Friday morning, but they still have a lot of waiting to do.
And I think that's what people got to understand, that no matter what, if the wins are kind of irrelevant here. I mean, they can't lose. You said it perfectly. You can't take anything past the 60-minute W. The wins don't help. The wins just get thrown right out of the equation and all that. So, like you said, the key is anything. It's got to be a 60-minute win, because once you get into losing some of their pairwise points and losing some by going to overtime, that's where they're in big trouble. And I mean, I think that's where everybody's got to understand they can't climb any higher. I think you said it up pre-show, right, Ed? They can't go any higher than 12. Is that correct?
It's not likely. Even wins over Lindenwood are probably not going to raise them. And it's possible that since it doesn't raise the RPI, that it could actually see them drop one or two places as other teams gain RPI points. I haven't done the math, but those are in the realm of possibility. Now, the question is, what does this say about an independent schedule and the ability to build a good RPI and from that and pairwise? I want to point out, Jim, before you jump in on it, that the team that really helped Alaska with its RPI and pairwise in this was Arizona State, because they put together.
That helped, certainly. Still, those two wins, I can't consider them. If we define quality wins as wins against teams in the top 16 of the pairwise, or top 16 of the RPI, for that matter, they have two of them. One was against Denver, and it was a huge win, a 3-1 win on the road at Denver. The other was against Notre Dame, a 3-2 win on the road at Notre Dame. Those two wins alone are really what is pushing this team in. You could probably also say the overtime win on the road at Nebraska Omaha way back on October 21st, but not the same quality as the Denver win itself is almost 50% of the reason that Alaska is in this position right now. You lose that game, you take that one win out, you take the quality win bonus out, you take all that stuff out, how much it bolstered the RPI. This team's probably somewhere around 22, 23.
So there is a possibility to put together a schedule, but you've got to have everything break in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, you'd rather have a schedule like Arizona State where you can have a few of those good wins, maybe you get 3 of them, 4 of them, but you've also, your losses don't get magnified. If they had lost any of their games against Anchorage, they played Anchorage 6 times. Let's not forget that. If they had lost any of those games and they had 2 wins in overtime, you lose any of those games, you're not in this position either.
And I'll go back to what Tim Dennehy always talked to all the coaches about in Florida. You have to win hockey games. Win hockey games. And they won hockey games. And that's why I kind of argued when you're like Anchorage, and you're like Atlantic Hockey around 35%. They always say play more games so you can have more opportunities to win. I almost say play less games because then you have more opportunities for a top guy. We had this big conversation of one year about maybe even going higher Atlantic Hockey games within the league, because it would help get 2 teams in the tournament, because it's less opportunities to lose.
Right. Less opportunities to lose to teams outside of your league and
Correct.
thus take down your out of conference winning percentage.
I think we had in the COVID year, because we barely played any out of conference games. When we did pretty well because it was against Huntsville and LIU and Independence. We had 3 teams in the top 20 and we had 2 in the top 10.
Right.
And that's where it kind of hit everybody. So sometimes you manufacture your schedule the right way, but you also have to win those games.
And it's hard to predict that schedule 2 or 3 years down the road. You don't know how good a team might be when you schedule a couple of years ahead of time.
Yeah, that's another big part of it is you don't really know when you're building these schedules. There's no crystal ball to know what 3 years down the road, how strong Denver's going to be or how strong Notre Dame's going to be. And Notre Dame, if I know we're going to, Derek kind of mentioned how he was so high on them, and good job, Schools. You made a correct call. But if they lose twice this weekend, they're out of the tournament. They're out of that area that gives Alaska another quality win. They would lose that quality win bonus from Notre Dame. So they need to be rooting for Notre Dame this weekend as much as anybody.
Kind of a catch-22 though, because they're right on the bubble too. So
they're inside the bubble right now. So
yeah, right now they are. But
as long as they keep moving up, it'll help. That won't hurt Fairbanks.
Well, let's take a look at another great game, crazy finish. We were all watching replays of it together this morning before we started recording. Minnesota State clinched the CCHA regular season championship, the MacNaughton Cup on hand to present to the Mavericks there. Michigan Tech was down 2-0, scored on a penalty shot, appeared to tie the game with 91 seconds left, and it was disallowed on a challenge. They took a penalty shortly thereafter, tied the game on a shorthanded goal, but then allowed a power play goal just a few seconds later. But let's rewind back to the challenge. We looked at it and we're convinced that was absolutely the right call to wave off that goal.
It was. And let me just say, Don Lucia, maybe you want to play games that don't happen in Mankato because there's always a crazy ending if there's a championship on the line. But all kidding aside, I think the referees got that one right. And I think, I don't think Mike Hastings wanted to use his challenge. He wanted the referees to just go in and look at it. But, the way the rule's written, the referees followed the right protocol. They called it a goal on the ice. Hastings challenged it. And at that point, you could see just as the goaltender, just before the puck goes in, you see a player give a little cross check to the goaltender as he's trying to get up from being down on the ice. That was what likely, I assume, was what caused the goaltender interference. If that cross check doesn't happen, do I think that the goaltender gets across and makes the save? Probably not. But you can't be cross checking a goaltender as they're trying to play their position. So that I'm sure is what was called. And I think it was the right call. The ending thing got crazier after that. I mean, you think at that point, okay, they didn't get it. Then 10 seconds later, they take a penalty, a good call. But then they score shorthanded. And you're saying, oh, here we go, 2-2. Now you've got the 2-2 game. You're not taking that goal away from us. Well, a couple of seconds later, Minnesota State goes down. They score on the power play. Crazy ending. But I now that we've all been able to watch it, and I appreciate technology and Ed, your ability to show us all the video before we got in the air here today. I feel like they got it right. I think that's the most important part of any time you have a controversial call in the closing seconds of a game.
See, I watched it yesterday, and when we talked about it at the start, your first thought live on the big camera, the main camera, that's a goal. That there was so much commotion going on, and there's so much. But then when you see the camera from behind the net and above the net, that extra cross check, like you said, I don't think it was neat. I almost think it was almost like he was using himself to push himself up to get off the ice. And yes, he impeded the goalie's progress. I agree with you. I don't think the goalie makes the save, but by rule, that was interference. What I really want to give the referees a lot of credit because one, they didn't bow to the pressure. Mike Hastings gave it to them about reviewing. He did not have his timeout. So for Mike to challenge, if he would have been wrong, he would also had a penalty. Mike let the referee have it, and they stuck to their guns. They made him use his challenge. Luke Regner, their hockey ops guy, worked for me. He's as one of the best in the business. I saw him on the headset with Paul Kirtland. They used the challenge. It was waved off. The referees then also got it another earful from Joe Shawn afterwards. So they took a lot of, and I think, as you said, technology, but we saw a lot of 4-letter words being thrown by both coaches at them. And they took it because they knew what high stakes was and what emotion was. The next play, the right call on a hook, because Minnesota State had a chance for a breakaway. The funny thing about all that is there were people on the ice calling for a penalty shot. If they would have had a penalty shot, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to score the shorthanded goal. And then the shorthanded goal happens. I mean, it was bizarre. If you watch the last from the timeout at 2:16, I think that was Michigan Tech's timeout at 2:16. Mankato users early in the period. If you had a chance, watch the last 2:16. It's theater. It's entertaining.
Let's put yourself in the mind of these coaches right there. I mean, that was a gutsy thing for Mike Hastings to do, to take that. That could have been, had it gone the wrong way, turned over. So like you said, probably relying very strongly on what he was being told by the hockey ops guy watching the video. But I mean, in that position, is it the case where, hey, it's this late in the game, we've got to take the opportunity, got to take the chance on that?
I think they were also showing it on the video board in the building because you could hear the crowd oohing and ahhing. So he had a chance to see it again. I think he was actually trying to tell them, look at the video board. That's why you need to look at this. It is gutsy because you never know what they're going to come out with when you go in there. And at that point, we talked about this last week, being on the pairwise bubble. You just sit there and you go, okay, we'll get to overtime, at least get some credit for this. But he took the chance, and and they announced that Minnesota State is challenging it on the ice. I really love the fact that they had the microphones going. They told everybody what was going on, and they weren't left in the dark. So I think the referees from the league, from the videos to everything, they did it right. And it is a tough call. It is a tough call to make to get that challenge. I have not been in an ability to get a penalty yet, because mine's always, the last 2 years I haven't had that opportunity. But the whole time I'm going, because I see the video, challenge it. But being on that other side, you're going, what if? You never know what they're going to come out of there sometimes with.
Yeah, and Mike Hastings also was, I'm sure, very aware that the only way that they could win the MacNaughton Cup straight out was a regulation win, because of the situation they had put themselves in the night before. If they, well, I guess that's maybe not true. Am I right on that? If they had taken 2 points, I guess that would have been a 2-1 split, and they would have had a co-champion situation. So, and if they had lost in overtime, they would have had, they would have lost the MacNaughton Cup straight out. It was gutsy. You said it, Schools, because you're talking a 2-2 game. If they just decide we don't have enough video review, or we're going to get to something next.
Here we go.
What if the technology didn't work in that case? And you said, okay, we got to just go with the call on the ice that stands.
But it's a penalty too.
That's a penalty.
Yes. If they go in there and there's no technology, if the technology doesn't work, it's a penalty.
So that is all stuff you have to, bear in mind when you're Mike Hastings. But he put his faith in the process. I'm glad that it worked, and I'm glad that they got the call right. It was gutsy though.
But this is what I don't like about it, because it's happened before. If they go in and the technology doesn't work, you could see it on the video board. You could see it all over the building. You can see it on TV. If the technology in the booth didn't work for some reason, it's still a penalty, because they can't overturn your challenge. I always hated that. They always did tell me, when you go to Army, there's a blind spot right at the blue line. If you challenge there and it's wrong, you're still going to lose your timeout. I'm like, but if you can't see it, that's not my fault.
Yeah.
And how do I know where the blind spot is? So and leading into your next thing, how do you not know? As a coach, sometimes they tell you, hey, the video's down, or hey, the video's here. You do get an idea, but sometimes you don't. and they get in there and they have an issue leading into the next segment.
Well, and before we get there, I just want to drop in that my view on video has been evolving. And I saw a situation in a game I was calling Friday night, long stretch pass, guy at the far blue line. Turns out he took the pass inside the zone. He was offside, which explains how he got behind everybody. In the old days, that would have been called a goal. It was replayed on the video in the arena, and that immediately drew a coach's challenge because everybody in the arena could see it was offside. The officials took about 2 seconds to look at the video and waved it off, but that would have been a goal back before video.
So I saw that same play, Ed, and I saw it. Usually in Atlantic hockey does have a rule that they do not put up the replays on the video board, which I don't like because I think everybody in the arena should be able to see it.
Yeah, well, that went up there before the challenge, which is why it was.
Yeah,
up
which
in the arena.
shouldn't happen. It should have been relied upon on that. According to rule, you cannot put up a video.
After the next
you put it up after the next puck drop. I mean, they helped Air Force out there a little bit, but I watched it too. I'm like, that's offsides. Everybody and their brother knew that was offsides.
Yeah.
But I think that there's got to be some sort of, we're starting to standardize stuff. There's other things that we need to standardize. We need to standardize microphones on officials. We need to standardize that you can put it up on the Jumbotron if you have one so that everybody can see it.
Right.
I mean, I think we're in a customer friendly game. Showing replays is customer friendly. We're working for entertainment dollars. Put that up, have the referee talk. And I think that helps with all the entertainment value as you're fighting for your dollar in the marketplace.
And I give the referees in the games I called this weekend credit because even though they aren't mic'd up, every time there was a challenge, they went over and said, the goal is being challenged for offside. The goal is being challenged for a major that happened prior to the play. And they explained what was happening. And that at the very least is good. But let's get back to the other part. And that's when technology doesn't work. And probably because of that produced the worst call of the weekend, at least if you hear from people. Everybody thinks the referees in their league are the worst in college hockey. So maybe everybody needs to settle down. Anyway, Friday's game, Denver and Western Michigan, major penalty called, no video review. 2 Denver players collide and run into a Western Michigan player, and the Western Michigan player gets the major. You guys looked at that a bit. What did we see there?
Well, there was the play was challenged for one thing. The call on the ice, from what I was told, was originally a minor. The referees went into the box, the video review system not working, which is this is just a headache right now of how we are. How many years are we into video review? 12, 15? It's been around for quite some time. And we still have systems that are antiquated, systems that don't work, systems that vary from school to school. We've harped on this before, but it's just, to be in a big game. This is first place versus second place, regular season title on the line. Potentially Denver, congratulations. They do win the Penrose Cup with their sweep, but this was a major penalty that was called. Referees were not able to see it. And then they got together just on their own and decided, okay, we're taking a 2-minute minor, making it a 5-minute major. We never saw anything that would tell us that we should have done that, despite the fact that, there could have been video, that the TV crew had video. They were able to watch it. I don't get how we are this far off on systems when this has been around forever. I mean, I'm just trying to think of my first NCAA regional was Worcester in 99. And I sat next to Greg Shepard, who was the video review official. So it existed in 1999, at least at the NCAA tournament level. So we've been doing this for more than 20 years. And inside the regular season, it's got to be 15 years that this has existed.
2014 is when they put it mandatory for all playoff games. 2015 is when it went in mandatory.
But what about regular season games?
2015 regular season games.
So that's still okay. Maybe not as long. I'll take that back. It feels like it's been a lot longer.
But here's the thing. One other thing besides equipment is also the training of the replay operators. Referees talk about how some places they go, everything is queued up on the play and it's ready to go. Other times they're fumbling for the clip, and, not everybody takes that position seriously. I even saw a pair of games this year where they had a tablet, like not even one of your big honking iPads, but a little tablet that they're trying to watch replays on. They might as well have been looking on a phone. There needs to be some standardization on that and some training too.
And well, you got students potentially too doing it, which is not fair to them. I know you were going to say investment, but cost is where people are going to say, oh, that it's too expensive. Or everybody's got a different system too. Even within leagues, you have a different DV Sport, XOs. You have all these different ones. Mercier's has a local one up there. I mean, there's just so many different variables. That was not a penalty. I don't even think that was a 2-minute penalty on Denver. And I said on the last one, when Mike Casey challenged it, they could come out, even though that the big screen sees it, that they can come out and not have a call and it be a penalty. That's what happened. They came out. But then to talk about it and go, oh, okay, it's a major. That's wrong. That's wrong. Those referees should have a week off.
Well, and that very well could have cost Western Michigan the game. You don't ever know the counterfactuals of what might have happened, but a couple of goals there put it away for Denver. And then the Pioneers win on Saturday to take their second consecutive Penrose Cup. And hats off to Heather Weems for traveling to Kalamazoo to make the presentation after the game. And we're going to take a pause now and take a look at the NCAA tournament, how things are looking for that, maybe even what attendance is going to be. USCHO Weekend Review is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th in Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Men's Frozen Four. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to help your team rule the rink? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, go big for every goal. 2, when you bring it, bring enough for the whole class. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
Welcome back to USCHO Weekend Review. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. Well, let's see if we can be semi-controversial in this segment. We may get into some controversy. Let's talk about the NCAA tournament. Every year this time, people start talking about attendance and whether they should change the system and so forth. If we look at possible locations for teams right now, there are a couple that look pretty good and a couple that are maybe iffy. Now, Penn State probably would end up in Allentown as one of the teams.
They have to because they're
a host. Okay, so they definitely will show up in Allentown. And Minnesota to Fargo makes the most sense for attendance and proximity, and assuming they're still the number 1 overall seed. So those are a couple of places for excellent attendance possibilities. Certainly Allentown would like to have excellent attendance for a change. But we look at the other ones, Quinnipiac, they're not the hosts, but they've got to be considered the best choice for Bridgeport. That's, a half hour's drive from campus. And if you were maintaining bracket integrity, maybe would have been Allentown. And then Manchester, what if there's only one Hockey East team available to be in that? What happens to attendance there?
Well, I'll take it from the committee perspective. I think Allentown, with going to Allentown for Penn State, how many times we've been to Allentown and went, oh, if only Penn State were here. I think they've only been there maybe once of all the times in Allentown. So good that they're going to have that ability to do that. You do have, like you say, a semi-host in Quinnipiac. You will put them there. You will move Minnesota to Fargo. After that, if you only have one Hockey East team, I think that's where things are going to struggle, especially in Manchester. You're going to have to put a name school there, maybe a Michigan, to try to draw it. And you're going to have to put your Hockey East team there. You're going to hope that Quinnipiac draws in Bridgeport. You're going to hope a name school draws in Manchester. And then you got to put your Hockey East team there somehow through. I think you're going to see more band movement this year to try to make attendance work out.
I think it's going to have to happen. I mean, last week, Ed, you were kind of alluding to it. It was Quinnipiac was paired up with Penn State, which means they would have, been going to Allentown. But you have to throw out bracket integrity a little bit there. You don't have the 2 versus 7 right now. 2 versus 7 is Quinnipiac versus Harvard. You can't have that. So you're going to have to do some moving. And once you start the moving, I think you're kind of okay to just keep going with it and do whatever you have to do to get some sort of atmosphere. I see what you kind of mentioned. I see Michigan most likely being the team, if things stay as they are today, that'll be the team that gets moved out to Manchester, which is good. I mean, Michigan has a good alumni base across the whole country. They have fans that will travel. So I do think that could be strong. You get somebody like a St. Cloud State. I remember when they were in Albany a couple of years ago, really strong following. And that was a COVID year when you couldn't have that many fans. They still had a ton of fans there. But if, Boston University, you can almost, whatever you have to do, you have to get them to Manchester to protect the gate there. This is actually one of those years that I think that the attendance will be okay. You'll have a ton of North Dakota fans head up to Fargo if Minnesota's there just to root against Minnesota. And Minnesota fans, it's not that far. I don't know what the drive is, 5 hours maybe from the
Something
Twin Cities
like
up
that,
there.
4 hours.
So it's manageable, and they'll end up making that trip up there. Minnesota fans will. So I think you'll be good there. You'll be great in Allentown. Quinnipiac ends up in Bridgeport, great attendance there. Manchester's a concern. This is actually one of those years, and Derek, you sat on the committee for long enough. This is one of the years that the committee's probably saying, hey, attendance probably looks good. I noticed that the NCAA was still doing some ticket sales this past week and, taking $15 off select locations and stuff like that. And hope a lot of fans took advantage of that. But they're going to have a good attendance, I think, in the regionals this year. And it might actually tamper down some of that talk of, hey, we need to have the first round on campus sites. But I will go back to my plea for, I would love to see the first round played on campus sites. And then I would like to see all 8 of those teams then advance to one site. It's not going to happen for a long time until we get out of this cycle of Frozen Fours, but play one round on campus sites and then take 8 teams, put them in one city, 5 days, play a national championship.
Ooh.
Just thought. We're there long enough now anyway. So we get there on Tuesday, just get there on Sunday instead.
I'm gonna go completely against you on that. There's no way that they're gonna move them off campus. You're gonna have everybody that you're gonna have fights. I mean, the only people that want that are the big time, the big schools that think by having a home gate that they'll never get beat. I don't think that's, like you said, the cycle's already taken care of. It's not going to happen through that. But I will say that as a person on the committee, I think the attendance is looking really good right now. What we just spelled out by moving people around, that's got the capability of being one of the best attended regionals in a long time. Because Minnesota's going to fill in Fargo. Imagine if somehow North Dakota gets in as a 15. They win the tournament, they get in as a 15 seed. They're going to have to be there. I mean, gosh, can you imagine Minnesota?
You're going to get a Minnesota, North Dakota first round game.
Can you imagine that one? And then Atlantic Hockey's got to go play Quinnipiac, which then would help that. I mean, there's so many different variables if that happened. But really, you're probably talking an Atlantic Hockey going to Fargo to play Minnesota on bracket integrity right there. Then you got Quinnipiac's going to get potentially a Western team if that's how things hold out, because they can't play an ECAC team. So you're going to see a little bit of shake. But I think, with having Penn State and Allentown, having BU and Manchester, I mean, you've got the makings of some pretty good brackets right off the bat. But I do agree with you. You're going to have to move within bands. The bands are going to be, you're not going to have 1, 16, 2, 15, 3, 14.
Nope.
No chance.
No, like I said, once you make one move,
yep,
I think it opens it up to making a ton, and just move teams wherever you have to make it. You have to keep them within their bands, and you really don't want to see like a 1 playing a 5 in the second round. But if that's what makes it, a possibility to have great attendance, great atmosphere.
And there's still the travel rules too, a little bit. There's still this, they haven't got rid of the travel rules that they would like to, but they have kind of discounted them. They can always use those as an excuse too.
We were talking as if there were just one Hockey East team in the tournament. Say there are two and you get like a BU in Manchester and Northeastern in Bridgeport or something like that. I mean, that helps your attendance even more.
It would. I think they would. I still feel the committee might try to force it that you put both teams in Manchester just to try, separate. It depends where you are, right? Like if you end up with, BU ends up jumping up to a number one seed for some reason, and then you have somebody in the fourth band, you can't have them in the same region. But if it's BU as the 2 seed and, let's say Northeastern, let's say Connecticut as the number 4 seed, you're forcing them to get up to. Connecticut might be the one exception. Let's say it's Merrimack and Northeastern. You're forcing them to go up to Manchester.
Well, Merrimack to Manchester makes a whole bunch of sense. And imagine Quinnipiac and UConn both in the same regional in Bridgeport.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Bridgeport, Quinnipiac. We're
starting to
money.
Build our own tournament. We're liking it more every day.
You're printing money, Quinnipiac and UConn. The only thing is they probably play it at like the 2:00. For TV purposes, I'll put it on noon at ESPN on a Friday.
Well, and you see, that's the other thing. The TV purposes is why I don't think you'll go to 8 regional games or 8 on-campus games for the first round, because then you've got to have TV in all those places. You got to figure that whole thing out with ESPN. And you know what? 1 year of really good attendance probably kind of puts that off the table for a while. Of course, there's still some time to happen, but right now, just where the number ones look and who's going to be a host, it's looking pretty good.
I think that this really is shaping out to be good. I started bracketology last week. My apologies to my colleague Jason Moy. His email that gave his bracket ended up in spam, so we published with just my bracket. This week we will have both. His version and my version should be coming out either Tuesday or Wednesday this week. So keep an eye out for that. It's getting fantastic. And like, as we're building in some scenarios here and some of the thoughts of teams that could make the tournament, like you say, a UConn goes on a run, they're certainly capable of doing it. I would love some of these potential matchups that we could have in NCAA regionals.
I want to hit one other thing. You brought it up as a possibility to talk about, Jim. Northeastern dropping out of the bubble after the split with UMass, right? It was a split on the weekend.
It was, yeah.
The interesting thing to me this year, and I know it's probably that way every year, but it just seems more so this year, how much volatility there is right around the cut line, around the bubble this year compared to other years.
It really is. I mean, tons. You look at Notre Dame, they win on Saturday night in overtime. Granted, road win in overtime against Michigan. Top 5. Good job, Derek. And now they're up at 14. And, 2 more wins that advance them. They'd have to beat Michigan State twice, but they do that, advance to the semifinals of the Big Ten. And, I see a chance that they could solidify their spot. Now, they have to advance this weekend. That's one of those teams. But going back to Northeastern, they did a great job. And Jerry Keefe, I'll tell you, he was 42 at one point. I had him at 40 on January 7th in the pairwise. They climbed their way up, got it up to, I think, as high as 13. Maybe they get to 12. I'm not sure. But it's been very volatile because they, on Friday night, started the night, I think, at 14, lose to UMass on the road, and they dropped to 20. They beat UMass at home. They go up to 17. It used to be, by the time we got to the final week of the regular season, final 2 weeks of the regular season, you couldn't really move that much. But it's just showing there's a lot that goes into quality win bonuses and adding and subtracting them as teams move in and out of the top 15, I can't remember if it's Derek. Do you remember top 15, top 20 in the RPI? I can't remember what gets you a quality win bonus, but these teams moving in and out, and then also just crazy losses that are happening that you don't expect to happen this time of year. That was a first place Northeastern team taking on a 10th place UMass team. And, UMass had some real goaltending woes this season, and their goalie stands on his head, plays a great game, 3-2 win. I guess it's why we play the games. But still, the volatility we have seen in the lower end of the pairwise bubble this year is more than we've seen in typical years. And it does show that a couple of weeks from now, when we put the pairwise predictor live, and you have your 100. I don't know what it is. I think when we start, it's in the 250 or 500,000 different scenarios that are available. But you'll see exactly how volatile it will get all the way up to Championship Saturday. There'll only be 6 games, and I guarantee there will be opportunities for teams to bounce up, fall in, fall out. Teams that think that they're safe suddenly are maybe not. It's going to be that crazy this year.
Who's your upsets? We got playoffs going here. Who's your one upset?
Ooh,
I mean, playoffs are starting. We got to have.
I'll tell you, there's one that I don't think that it will happen, but if Wisconsin went in and knocked off Michigan at least once and maybe twice to take the series, that one wouldn't shock me.
Really?
Wisconsin is playing a little bit better of late. Michigan comes into the playoffs winless in 4. I think that's a good Michigan team, but if Wisconsin went in there and at least took a game, that wouldn't shock me.
I'm just going to stick with Atlantic hockey. I'm going to be the Atlantic hockey homer here. I'm going to make Ed go out and get somewhere else. I like Niagara over Sacred Heart. A 6-3. I don't know if Sacred Heart's played very well in their new building yet. And you don't never bet against an older veteran team like Niagara. That's kind of my thought process on that one. But there's going to be there always is. There's going to be somebody, a road team that goes in the ECAC and moves up. It always happens.
Well, boy, I was going to pick an Atlantic hockey one. I was going to say Holy Cross over AIC as an upset, but looking at the NCHC, can you really call any of them a real upset? But you get right around that 4-5 Minnesota Duluth at St. Cloud State. I feel like the Bulldogs are one of those teams that we've seen this year, and probably UMass is one of those where they've got more talent than their record will show. And you get this time of year and it's just a couple of games, maybe something there. So I'll throw that one in there as Duluth is a good upset candidate.
I think once you're in the bottom 5-12,
I'm going to go Princeton over Union too.
Princeton's not a bad team.
I really do. That's just reality. That league is strong in their top 5, maybe, but 6 through 12, I think, are all equally not strong enough. I don't know if that's the way I should be saying it, but they all have some room for significant improvement, and thus anybody can walk away with 2 wins in a 3-night span.
Well, that's what gets me with all these 1-game knockouts now. I mean, I think anybody's going to be able to beat anybody on 1-game knockouts. Would it surprise you in certain areas? Anything hockey's would that surprise you? No,
if we had UMass at the Garden, which right now I think are they still a 10 seed? They're the 10 seed in Hockey East. If UMass ended up at the Garden, if New Hampshire ended up at the Garden the way they're playing, if you ended up with New Hampshire, Maine, and UMass, and you eliminated teams like Boston University, Merrimack, and Northeastern, wouldn't shock me. And then throw either Lola or Connecticut in because they're most likely to play in that 4-5 game. That wouldn't shock me. At least to have 2 of those teams in there. Maine's unbelievable right now. They're on a heater. So yeah, I a single elimination. Throw out.
Yeah, and how about when we get to the second round in the ECAC and you have 4 teams that have had a week off? This isn't the time of year where you want to lose momentum. You don't want to start a game and have your timing a little off while you try to get going. I think that's maybe a little detrimental in that situation, unless you got a lot of bodies to get healthy.
I think the buys are tough, but I also think that the top 4 in ECAC are stronger than the bottom half of the league. So maybe you have a bad first period, bad first 2 periods. Maybe you pull out Friday, maybe you lose Friday, but then you still have Saturday, Sunday to make that up. And I think that those teams, ECAC is the one league, at least top 3, I feel like should be chalk. Quinnipiac, Harvard, Cornell have to get to Lake Placid. After that, okay, maybe St. Lawrence or Colgate.
St. Lawrence has been hot.
St. Lawrence has been good of late. So maybe that should, maybe it's just chalk and all 4 go. But the top three in that league, I feel they still have to win their games, but I feel like they'll all get to Lake Placid.
Interesting. It's going to be interesting.
With that, I think we'll wrap things up for this edition. USCHO Weekend Review is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Find our podcasts at uscho.com/podcasts or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Weekend Review.